I tried to make it on my own. Well, you see, well, you see.
Understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos. And tonight, I want to talk to you guys about who is Santa Claus. Is he a Siberian shamanism? Is he Ded Moroz? Is he St. Nicholas? Who's Kris Kringle? Who's Father Christmas? Jack Frost? We're going to be diving into all this tonight. And it should be quite a bit of fun. It's going to be a deeper dive than maybe your general, who's Santa Claus? Well, it's St. Nicholas of Myra. We are going to address that. But we're going to dive deeper. We're going to scratch a little bit deeper than just surface level tonight, as we usually do here on Church of the Eternal Logos. And this is a part one. So the part two of this stream is going to be debunking or criticizing or looking at, is Christmas a pagan holiday? Is Christmas really all about the winter solstice and solar worship, reaching back into ancient pagan traditions? Well, that's going to be for members only. So part two of this stream is only going to be over at the website for members. So please go over to the website, become a member if you could. And for those of you who are wanting a yearly option, that's already on the website, so you can go and select your amount. If you want to just pay a one-time $60 fee for a year's membership, you can do that. But that's going to be part two, is the origins of Christmas. Is it Christian or is it pagan? And I'm going to be arguing that it's actually Christian. But tonight, we're going to be focusing on the enigmatic figure of Santa Claus. Who is Santa Claus? Who is Santa Claus? And my argument is that Santa Claus is actually an amalgamation of a multitude of different entities. Now, obviously, the historical person of St. Nicholas of Myra, one of our great Orthodox saints, the one who slaps the crap out of Arius at the council, we love St. Nicholas. And he is certainly the origin of the Christianization of a lot of different winter old men figures. And that's what Ded Moroz is over in the Russian. And we're going to begin getting at this. But Santa Claus is the Dutch version. And that's really, we're going to find out that Santa Claus, and the term Santa Claus is already a very American idea. It's a very American idea. That it's actually not till the 1800s, the 19th century, that Santa Claus, as we understand it, really gets going. And I'm going to be diving into even Coca-Cola and Thomas Nast and how the sort of Finnish depiction, Germanic depiction of Father Christmas turns into what Americans called Santa Claus. And so the whole world now refers to this particular entity as Santa Claus. This is a uniquely American phenomenon. And so anybody in the world who then refers to this entity as Santa Claus, it actually can be traced back to America. Santa Claus is a very American figure. And so we see Pierre Noël over in France. We see Father Christmas over in England. We see Ded Moroz over in East Slavic countries, Russian. Santa Claus over in the Dutch. And so Shaman Claus is another little line of thought that I want to tie into tonight, that again, we're going to be diving deeper than just the general Webster or your Britannica definition of who Santa Claus is. That there's actually quite a few connections regarding shamanism, Siberian shamanism. And that's part of, again, today's argument, that Santa Claus is really a much more complex figure than just to say, well, it's St. Nicholas. Because really what it does is take a historical figure of St. Nicholas, of which all these other figures are not historical. They're mythological. And even the shaman or Siberian shamanism itself, it's sort of archetypal. It's not historical. St. Nicholas is the historical root of Santa Claus. But when we start looking at the archetypal structure, when we start looking at, again, some of the other strappings, why is he associated with reindeer? Why is he associated with elves? Why is his colors red and white? Why does he live at the North Pole? And when we look at Ded Moroz over in Russia, when we look at some of these other figures, they don't live at the North Pole. What's going on here? Why are these unique features going on? And so we're going to be diving into another possible explanation of Santa Claus and how it actually has some psychedelic relationship. And Santa Claus is related, and I think by the time I get done, I'm going to probably make this case fairly well, that Santa Claus is tied to Siberian Amanita muscaria forms of shamanism. And that's going to then account for some of these other semiotic features related to Santa Claus that have nothing to do with St. Nicholas. Now, obviously, when we're going to tie in and we're going to discuss St. Nicholas's the story of how he helped a poor man put gold coins in 3 stockings of some ladies who needed money for their dowry. So he helped out a poor man. We're going to dive into all that. We got an Orthodox article on the real Santa Claus talking about St. Nick. But then we're going to go deeper. We're going to look at all these other figures in all these other countries. And then we're really going to hammer down this Santa Claus, this Amanita muscaria, or what I'm calling Shaman Claus. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. But in relation to all this, to bring out a sort of Orthodox theological framework for our discussion is Santa Claus real? Is Santa Claus real? Now, one of the first videos I watched of Jonathan Paggio was back in 2018 when he did a video talking about Santa Claus being real. And in that video, he talked about how the reality or the embodiment of something being real transcends just the ability to touch it. And so Santa Claus is real. And we can see Santa Claus when you go out into the world through, again, the spirit of the holiday that we're in, whether it be Christmas cards, whether it be Santa Clauses that little kids are sitting on his lap talking about what they want for Christmas, that Santa Claus is real. But my question, or my point that I want to say is the reality of Santa Claus can really teach us something about the incarnation. Because my argument, as similar to Jonathan Paggio, is that yes, Santa Claus is real. This amalgamated figure of psychedelic shamanism, of Father Christmas, of the Winter Wizard of Russia, of St. Nicholas of the Orthodox faith. All this stuff is amalgamized into this figure called Santa Claus, which also gets commodified through Coca-Cola and through the advertisers of the 20th century. So the reality of Santa Claus then is a concept, and that spirit, this concept of Santa Claus is in a very diluted way, because I am not tying Christ as a symbol. Jesus Christ is the incarnation of the second person of the Logos, and that historically happened. But what we can learn by looking at Santa Claus is that Santa Claus is incarnated, if you will, by all these men who then occupy the semiotics that fill it. And this is exactly how we become Christ. What does it mean to be a Christian? It means that you're a little Christ. Look up the etymology of what it means to be a Christian. And so what it means to be a Christian is to be a follower of Christ. And to be a follower of Christ then is to embody his teachings and therefore to be little Christ. When we are entered into the Orthodox Church, we're baptized. We're receiving the Holy Spirit. So we receive the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, the third person of the Trinity, to then be like Christ. In the same way that I'm talking about that this secularized, amalgamated figure known as Santa Claus is real by people sort of embodying his spirit. Now, this spirit is totally man-made. But if that is the case and Santa Claus is real, how much more real is Christ? How much more real is the incarnation of the second person, the Logos? And we have to remember this, because that is the spirit of the season. What is the point of the season that we're in? And this is a shout out to Father John, shout out to Father Athanasius. But we were talking about how the point of the season, the point of the nativity, the point of the incarnation is to show us how to be fully human. That's the whole point of all this stuff, is how are we fully human? And that's what Christ came to show us by incarnating. When we look at the narrative of Mary, we just celebrated, if you're on the Western Orthodox calendar, just what was it, last week or the week before, we were celebrating the birth of Mary, the Theotokos, the Mother of God. Fully human, a fully human person who dedicated their life to righteousness and piety, and because of that, she gave birth, that Christ, the second person of the Trinity, receives his humanness, his human nature through her. She shows us how to be human. John the Baptist, being the wild man, telling about it's time to repent, he, in a sense, is showing us who or how we become human. But Christ incarnating, that's the point. The point of God becoming fully man is to show how you and I, what we're capable of. The point, our telos, our teleology, what we are to become. And that is the point of the season. And so we can see Santa Claus as a quote-unquote real figure that quote-unquote incarnates through these people who embody the Spirit. But that's exactly what you and I are called to do with Christ. And so the nativity, the incarnation, is teaching us about who we can be and who we can become. And then I want to end this little opener, my intro here, is that Santa Claus is perfectly American. Because we're going to find that this whole Santa Claus thing is uniquely American. Nobody else, nobody called him Santa Claus in Europe, in Finland, in Sweden, in England, in Germany, in Greece. Nobody called them Santa Claus. This is uniquely American, and it gets going because America was looking for a sort of heritage to perpetuate, a sort of holiday spirit. This is in the mid-1800s. And so they looked to Sinterklaas, the Dutch version. And eventually this got tied up with Thomas Nast. And some of you are probably going to know who he is, and we're going to dive into him a little bit just to make reference. But he's famous for creating the elephant for the Republican Party. He was a sort of cartoonist. He was a sort of propagandist. And he's famous for our depiction of who Santa Claus is. This Germanized figure, he's responsible for it. And he also is famous for popularizing Colombia as sort of the American freedom. He popularized Uncle Sam as representing the federal government. He popularized the donkey, the jackass, as the Democrat. Thomas Nast was a cartoonist who popularized all these things, and he popularized the American stereotype of what Santa Claus is. That eventually gets really going through the company of Coca-Cola, of which we're gonna see this in today's presentation. And so Santa Claus, this Americanized version, is perfectly American because of its commodification. It's tied to consumerism. Literally, the caricature of the night before Christmas and all of our understandings of Santa Claus was deliberately placed in our minds through a Coca-Cola company, through a corporation with deliberate intentions of establishing something mimetic that would last. And it has. And that is a uniquely American phenomenon. We can look at Hollywood. We can look at, again, the majority of the commodification and the consumeristic practices of the world kind of trace themselves back to America. And Santa Claus is this perfect figure who encapsulates all this. And also, Santa Claus is an amalgamation, as we'll see, of all these different ancient European practices. And so, as an embodiment of a variety of an embodiment of the Finnish, an embodiment of the English, an embodiment of the Germanic, an embodiment of the French, this is America's heritage itself. America is rooted in a European identity. And Therefore, Santa Claus, again, is a perfectly American. Santa Claus is an amalgamation of all these things, as we will find out today and we dive further into. And then America is really no longer a Christian country. We can talk that it is. We can pretend that it is. We can definitely say it was rooted in a Christian ethos. That is for sure. We can point to the Freemasonic tendencies of many of the founding fathers. Okay. The deistic theology that many of them were a part of. Okay. But it's hard to say America is still Christian. And so Santa Claus, again, is a perfectly American symbol because it divorces us from the actual meaning of Christmas, which is the incarnation of Christ. It's the incarnation of the Logos. It's the incarnation of the Son. It's the incarnation of the begotten person of the Father. And so this is the point for all of this. And this is really the ultimate magic, right? Santa Claus then is wrapped up in all this sort of magical framework. And I'm really going to try to show you guys how this is tied back to shamanism and really does have a psychedelic root to it. But isn't that perfectly American? That Santa Claus, in a way, is a commodifying, commercialized, amalgamized figure who actually subtly, though I'm not saying that I don't like to see depictions of Santa or, again, the idea of the spirit of the season right now. You know, I love it. I love Christmas. But isn't it interesting that the American version of all this stuff, Father Christmas, the Pierre Noel, Ded Moroz, it's Santa Claus that divorces our attention from the ultimate meaning of the season. And he then he propels the minds of our society into a sort of magical, shamanic, paganized understanding, a commodified, commercialized world. Where do you find Santa Claus? Well, you go to the mall. You go to where all the stores are. You go to where everybody is consuming. And so the whole spirit of the season, then when people get too wrapped up in giving gifts, right? The gift giving gets way too overemphasized as opposed to the caring about people, right? If we really want to look back to St. Nicholas as the primordial archetype for Santa Claus, and then a lot of the sort of later paganized versions of St. Nicholas, it's because he cared about people. He gave the gold coins to a poor man who needed a dowry for his 3 daughters. It's caring about people. That's the point of gift giving. But in a way, the gifts have come into a sort of hindrance, a blinding of the fact that we're supposed to be caring about people. And then again, we can see the incarnation of Christ as the ultimate caring for people. It's the ultimate caring for other people and their salvation and how we're made in the image of God. So I think as we tease these layers back, there's way more to all this stuff than I think most people try to talk about or discuss. And so the fact that, as I hope that I do a justice at sort of showing all this stuff, that Santa Claus does have a paganistic, shamanistic origin, and it's really the most logical explanation for many of the semiotics that we're going to see. The elves. Why does Santa Claus have elves that make toys? Where does this come from? I could not find an adequate explanation other than the psychedelic motif. Why is Santa Claus flying on reindeer? You can't find an adequate explanation without looking back to Arctic forms of shamanism and their use of Amanita muscaria mushrooms and how they get around using reindeer, whether that be in Finland or in Siberia. And so, again, isn't Santa Claus the perfect embodiment of where we're going in the world? I've talked about the revival of the tribal, that we're going back to a tribal state. That's part of what, again, people like Terence McKenna thought psychedelics were going to do to our culture at large by the induction and the normalization of psychedelic inebriating use, that it was going to create tribal values in our society. And we see this happening right now. I've got, Marshall McLuhan's books over there. Yeah, I don't have them behind me. Marshall McLuhan's book's over here on the global village, the Gutenberg galaxy, and how the ways in which we consume information are tribalizing us specifically through the use of electronics. And so we are becoming, we're reverting back as civilization has reached this globalized form. We're actually reverting back to the tribal man. And so isn't it perfect then that Santa Claus is going to have these tribal, shamanic, pagan semiotics? So much to tease out in today's stream. It should be a fun one. Again, I want to say that this is only part one. Part two of this stream is probably going to be uploaded to the website tomorrow. Part two is going to be looking at, is Christmas pagan or is it Christian? And I'm going to dive into the whole, the astro-theological understanding of Christians worshiping Jesus' birth, the Son of God, on December 25th, because it's the 3 days after the winter solstice. The 21st is the winter solstice. So then the sun dies for 3 days, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and then it's born again on the 25th. Yeah, I know all that. We're going to dive into this. Is that really why Christians worship the incarnation of God on the 25th, or is it not? We're going to, again, look at that, but that's going to be for members. So the whole second part of this video is going to be teasing out, is Christmas a pagan or Christian holiday, of which I'm going to try to make the argument that it's actually a Christian holiday. It's a Christian holiday, and even though there's going to be, as I'm going to show, many forms of winter solstice worship and celebrations in the pagan world, it's not the same thing. And even if you want to say that Christians chose because it fits the semiotics of our own theology of Christ dying for 3 days and resurrecting, that they chose the 25th day for that reason, it doesn't disprove Christianity. This is one of the real mind-numbing perspectives I hear from the pagans, the atheists, the New Agers, is that somehow if there's an astro-theological relationship to Christianity, that somehow disproves Christianity. No, it doesn't. If anything, it shows that creation itself celebrates in the literality of something that pervades every level of truth. That the incarnation of God, the incarnation of Christ, is true at the archetypal, it's true at the cosmological, it's true at the literal, the historical, as a parable, as a framework. It's all true. And so if you want to hear that video, that's going to be, again, over at the website for members. So if you guys could, please become a website member. You can do so with the following link. And for those of you who've been wanting to purchase you can purchase a website membership for a year. I know some of you want to just purchase a year's worth of membership, you can do that if you would like. You can email me, but I think there should be a new option popping up there soon. I don't know if my buddy has it up yet, but there should be it should be popping up here on the website. So if you don't see it, you can always just donate. Go hit the donate button, send me $60, and I'll create your account for a year. Or that option on the website should be available here soon. Also, if anybody wants to sign up for a one-on-one and wants to talk about theology, mythology, any of these different things, you can do so with this link right here, and we can get into any topic you really want to dive into. You can have my undivided attention for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever you feel like purchasing. It's a great gift for your loved one, surprise them. I say that because one person reached out and that's actually what she bought for her boyfriend. And so shout out to you, Stacy. God bless you guys. Hope everybody's doing well. But she purchased a one-on-one. And so really looking forward to doing those with anybody who'd be interested. And then, of course, we have our book club, our second session this Tuesday. And also, if you guys would be interested in just helping out by purchasing something from the shop, you can do so with this link here. So with that being said, guys, smash that like. We got 100 viewers and only 50 likes. Come on, smash that like, guys. You know I put in the time. You know it's going to be quality. I don't come out here swinging, shooting blanks. So with that being said, guys, let's get into tonight's stream. So where are we going to start in tonight's discussion? Well, I think the best place to begin is a little overview of Santa Claus himself. Who is Santa Claus? And so as we see here, Santa Claus or Father Claus, St. Nicholas, St. Nick, Kris Kringle, or Santa is a legendary character originating in Western Christian culture who is said to bring gifts on Christmas Eve of toys and candy to well-behaved children. Now, again, he's going to have a variation. So then you can come down here and you can see his relationship to St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas, the 4th century Greek Christian bishop. And I got some articles here that we're going to be diving into. Here's a good one on St. Nicholas of Myra, the real story behind Santa Claus. I got another one here, the authentic Santa Claus. This is a OCA article. And then here is a really interesting one. The Greek name of Santa Claus is Agios Vasilis. And so Agios Vasileos is sometimes referred to as Saint Basil in English. This is how the Greeks worship Santa. Who's heard of him? We're also going to be diving into a lot of different people, some of which you guys may or may not be aware of. Ded Moroz and Snegorochka. And this is his little granddaughter. Snegorochka, the Russian Father Frost and Snow Maiden. So the Russian Christmas, the Russian Santa Claus isn't married. There's no Mrs. Claus for the East Slavics, but he does have a very hot and beautiful granddaughter, and we're going to be getting into Snegorochka and her relationship to Ded Moroz and how he is a sort of winter wizard. This is, again, another character, but even though people want to draw the comparisons to Ded Moroz, I think the more accurate relationship is in our culture, I think, is really Jack Frost, and so we're going to tie into that. But first one, let's get into St. Nicholas. So the first sort of predecessor, the archetypal, the historical root of Santa Claus is really St. Nicholas. And so let's check out this article. I think this is a really good article, and I'll share that with you guys here in the live chat. Okay, so St. Nicholas of Myra, the real story behind Santa Claus. Santa Claus, or St. Nicholas of Myra, born 15th of March 270 and died the 6th of December 343, and that's where we actually celebrate. So shout out to anybody whose saint was St. Nicholas. That was not today, but a week ago from today, we celebrated the feast day of St. Nicholas. Also known as Nicholas of Bari, was an early Christian bishop of Greek descent. Let me zoom in here so you guys can probably see this better. There you go. From the maritime city of Myra in Asia Minor, during the time of the Roman Empire, because of the many miracles attributed to his intercession, he is also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. St. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, prostitutes, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, unmarried people, and students in various cities and countries around Europe. His reputation evolved among the pious. Let me move this over. His reputation evolved among the pious as a common and was common for early Christian saints, as his legendary habit of secret gift-giving gave rise to the traditional model of Santa Claus, St. Nick. Also, Sinterklaas, which is the Dutch version, as we'll see. We'll see Sinterklaas and who that is. Make sure you guys smash that like. So this is a Greek version of St. Nicholas right here. St. Nicholas is one of the most popular saints in Christendom. His memory is commemorated in East and West on December 6th. He is commemorated and revered among Anglican, Catholic, Lutheran, and Orthodox Christians, a fierce castigator of the exploiters against the weak and unprivileged. He consoled very poor, persecuted, and suffering men. With his rare courage, he exercised control over those who were responsible for the evil of the people. An utterly poor saint endowed with poor girls, protected the crops and poor farmers, and became the helper of the sailors. He also took part in the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, expressing the genuine and unadulterated faith of the church, where the Christian doctrine was largely formed with the condemnation of the sect Arius. It is said during the council he slapped Arius, and Emperor Constantine the Great imprisoned him. Yes. Can you imagine that? This is St. Nicholas right here. Literally slapping around Arius, which he deserved it. He definitely deserved it. And he had to do a little bit of repenting. St. Nicholas had to get in the good graces of the church after this, but again, God bless him. He was a representative embodiment of the ancient Greek tradition, the humanitarian ideal of Hellenism in combination with Christian humanism, met in the holy face of Nicholas, were applied and became religious practice. His democratic tactics and his collegial methods and his actions were articulated through the experience of the long-standing Greek tradition, which was saved and improved by Christian teaching and practice. So here is a depiction of Sinterklaas. This is the Dutch version of Sinterklaas, but you can see it's definitely mirroring St. Nicholas, and he even has the little Western Catholic mitre hat, which, of course, we as Orthodox don't see his mitre hat in any of his icons. But St. Nicholas was a true exponent of the Greek Orthodox Christian ideal who traveled the world and was identified with the German god Odin, the Dutch Sinterklaas, the Scandinavian Nissi, the English Father Christmas, the nice old father of the Chinese, Pierre Noël of the French, and Santa Claus of the Americans. While on his return back to his place of origin, he was identified with Agios Vasilis, Basil the Elder. In Greece, St. Nicholas is best known as the patron saint of sailors, fishermen, ships, islands, and all cities with harbors, just as Mira had. The feast day of St. Nicholas is on December 6th, the day when the beloved bishop is reported to have died in the year 342 AD. The proximity of this date to Christmas is perhaps one reason why he has become so closely associated with it. St. Basil of Caesarea, who lived from AD 329 to 379, so 50 years, shares a very similar story to that of St. Nicholas. A contemporary of Nicholas, St. Basil was the bishop of Caesarea in Cappadocia, also in modern-day Turkey. Much like St. Benedict in the West, St. Basil established a wide-ranging guidelines for monastic life. He died on January 1st, 379, and all Greeks all over the world still honor St. Basil Agios Vasilis on that day. Gifts are exchanged on that day rather than on December 6th or 25th to remember St. Basil's ingenious method of giving back to the people. And so this is one of the points that I wanted to highlight, that as we look at the American Santa Claus, he's not as closely associated with St. Nicholas or the Christian faith. When we look back at, here we have Agios Vasilis, or we look at Sinterklaas for the Dutch, there's a much more direct relationship to St. Nicholas of Myra and then their depiction of the sort of winter hero, or, again, Father Christmas, the mixture of all these things. Our American version, Santa Claus, is not. He is not. The story of Agios Nicholas traveled around and rooted throughout Europe. The Saint Nicholas was transferred to Europe, where the Christians received the Greek beliefs for Agios Nicholas. Russian and Bulgarian folk songs say that it helps those who are in danger at sea. To the German people, St. Nicholas was identified with the pre-Christian pagan deity of Odin, who visited children with his 8-footed horse and because it was hungry, they had to have their boots full of straw near the chimney or the fireplace. With the Christianization of the Germans, the myth of Odin leaves and St. Nicholas comes, who is pretended to ride a white horse and is considered the protector of sailors. But the boots, the hanging socks in the fireplace, the decorated fir tree, all their pre-Christian pagan customs remain. St. Nicholas became the patron saint of Moscow and agriculture in Russia, patron saint of the Navy in Amsterdam, Netherlands, where despite a Protestant ban on the recognition of saints, he survived under the name Santa Claus, who is commemorated on December 6th, depicted with a priestly uniform and an episcopal staff to distribute gifts to children. European settlers, mainly Dutch, carried the myth with them to the New World. The sequel was written in New York in the early 19th century, the early 1800s, and this is where we get Santa Claus. When Americans began looking for ways to create nostalgic traditions and turn to St. Nicholas of Myra, who is commemorated a few days before Christmas, in 1821, the first lithographed book in America, The Friend of Children, contained a story about Santa Claus and is estimated to be the first to want the saint to visit children on Christmas Eve. The poem, The Night Before Christmas, or A Visit from St. Nicholas, as it became known at the beginning, contributed to this belief. And I'm going to butcher this, Korvanturi in Lapland or Finland, which was established the village of Santa Claus in 1927, was first used by the Finns for tourism in the early 1980s. And this is, where is that city? Oh, maybe I don't have it. I did have it pulled up. Maybe I got rid of it. The rest was taken over by the newspapers that reproduced the legend, while Coca-Cola, with the well-known advertisement, put the final touch. The image of Santa Claus with the red uniform and the white beard was finally made by the American company. It was an advertisement for the popular drink in 1931. So while Coca-Cola uses the image of Santa Claus to increase its consumption during the winter, after 70 years of cooperation, it is found that Santa Claus image also spread thanks to advertising. And so how funny that the American version, again, Santa Claus, we can basically point to the company Coca-Cola for giving us our image of Santa Claus currently. And so here's an article. I don't know if I'm going to read this because it kind of goes over. I may read parts of it real quick here, but this is another good article here. Kind of goes over what we just said, but this is here. Let me share this with you guys too. If you guys want the links to all these, they will be in the live chat. Here is that. And then here is this little one talking about St. Basil and Santa Claus in Europe. Santa Claus is the quintessential persona of Christmas and New Year. He is that legendary figure who brings gifts, an imaginary person who is well associated in the Western culture as Father Christmas. The legend of Santa Claus or St. Nicholas varies depending on the geographical regions and their particular customs. St. Nicholas has been, for the majority of Western countries, the gift-giver saint who has been bringing gifts to the families on Christmas Eve. According to the tradition, the European Santa Claus comes from the Finnish village called Korvatunturi in Lapland province. Father Christmas or Santa Claus dates back in the 16th century. And so this is another interesting thing. When you look at a lot of these pagan variations or these, the English Father Christmas, here's Father Christmas right here. Well, Father Christmas, it's not super ancient. It's not even as old as St. Nicholas. That's really interesting when you start diving into some of this stuff. He is the traditional English name for the personification of Christmas. Although known as the Christmas gift bringer and typically considered to be synonymous with Santa Claus, he was originally part of a much older English folklore tradition. The recognizably modern figure of the English Father Christmas developed in the late Victorian period, but Christmas had been personified for centuries before then. English personifications of Christmas were recorded in the 1400s, guys. We're talking about the same time as the Italian Renaissance. This isn't ancient stuff. It doesn't even make its way back to what we would call the Middle Ages or the medieval period. So it definitely doesn't even reach back to the ancient period. But Father Christmas is an English personification. The Puritan-controlled English government had legislated to abolish Christmas, considering it papist, and it outlawed its traditional customs. Royalist political pamphleteers, linking the old traditions with their cause, adopted Old Father Christmas as the symbol of the good old days of feasting and good cheer. Following the Restoration in 1660, Father Christmas's profile declined. His character was maintained during the 18th and into the 19th century by the Christmas folk plays, later known as mummers' plays. Until Victorian times, Father Christmas was concerned with adult feasting and merrymaking. He had no particular connection with children. Oh, interesting. Nor with the giving of presents, nocturnal events, stockings, chimneys, or reindeer. But as later Victorian Christmases developed into child-centric family festivals, Father Christmas became a bringer of gifts. The popular American myth of Santa Claus arrived in England in the 1850s. 1850s from America back to England, okay? By the 1880s, the new custom had become established with the nocturnal visitor, sometimes being known as Santa Claus and sometimes as Father Christmas. He was often illustrated wearing a long red hooded gown trimmed with white fur. Any residual distinctions between Father Christmas and Santa Claus largely faded away in the early years of the 20th century, and modern dictionaries consider the terms Father Christmas and Santa Claus to be synonymous. Very interesting stuff there. So this is Father Christmas, the English version. In most cases, the figure of St. Nicholas is the predominant because of his common presence in many popular myths and legends. He is St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, Father Claus, Kris Kringle, St. Basil, or Agios Vasilis, or simply beloved Santa. The variations are many, but due to the commercial reason, Santa Claus is nowadays presented as a chubby and well-hearted man dressed in red who brings gifts, lives with Miss Santa Claus, which we will not find with this guy right here, Ded Moroz, the Russian sort of wizard, the winter wizard, if you will. I think that's probably the best way to characterize Ded Moroz, the pre-Christian East Slavic winter wizard. And this is what he looked like right here. So, you know, pretty base looking dude. You can definitely see the similarities with Santa Claus, but there is no Mrs. Claus with this guy. So with Mrs. Claus and a few flying reindeers that help him carry his presents over the world, the modern images of Santa Claus was created in 1881 by an American artist, Thomas Nast. Thomas Nast. This is this gentleman right here, who again I told you. He was an American or German-born American caricaturist and editorial cartoonist, often considered to be the father of the American cartoon. He was a critic of Democratic Representative Boss Tweed and the Tammany Hall Democratic Party political machine. Among his notable works were the creation of the modern version of Santa Claus, based on the traditional German figures of Saint Nicholas, and then the German word for Father Christmas, the English version, and the political symbol of the elephant for the Republican Party. Contrary to popular belief, Nast did not create, although he popularized all these things. Okay, yada, yada, yada. So that's Thomas Nast. And then later in 1931, Coca-Cola decided to use this figure and character and make Santa, or Father Christmas in the U.S., the most known and recognizable figure of the Christmas holidays. And so who are some of these other figures that I'm associating, or we associate with Santa Claus? Father Christmas is the English version. Ded Moroz is the Russian or the Eastern Slavic, and I want to dive into him here for a second because this is really interesting. I didn't know a lot about him, and I imagine a lot of you guys don't know much about him. So again, smash that like if you guys are watching, but this is Ded Moroz. And he is a legendary figure similar to St. Nicholas, Father Christmas, and Santa Claus, who has roots in Slavic mythology. The tradition of Ded Moroz is mostly spread in East Slavic countries and is an important part of Russian culture. At the beginning of the Soviet era, communist authorities banned Ded Moroz. Nevertheless, he soon became an important part of the Soviet culture because they couldn't suppress it. The literal translation of Ded Moroz is Grandpa Frost. Grandpa Frost. And so who is this Ded Moroz? Well, here we go right here. So Ded Moroz, Grandfather Frost, or Father Frost, the Slavic version of Santa Claus. Long ago came the symbol of Russian winter, New Year's, and presents. He is usually accompanied by his granddaughter, Snegurочка, riding with an evergreen tree and a traditional Russian troika, and a sleigh drawn by 3 horses abreast. Snegurочка is a unique attribute to the image of Ded Moroz. None of his foreign colleagues have such a cute companion. So again, Ded Moroz has no wife. There is no Mrs. Santa Claus. He has a very cute granddaughter who, again, I'm told by people with better access to the culture than I am, that within the sort of Eastern Slavic, even Armenian celebration of Ded Moroz, that Snegurочка, his granddaughter, is very sexualized, that there's a whole sort of sexual culture around his granddaughter, which I find very interesting. The original Russian gift giver was St. Nicholas, the country's patron saint, whose feast day is celebrated on December 6th. The image of St. Nicholas originates from the image of another hero, the ancient Morozko. In Russian folklore, Morozko is a powerful hero and smith who chains water with his iron frost. Morozko was not hostile to people. He helped them and presented them with awesome presents. In fairy tales, Morozko is at times kind and at times evil. To be precise, he is kind towards the hardworking and the good-hearted, but extremely severe with the mean and the lazy. And it is not just about justice only. It is rather about 2 personalities living in one magical person, Ded Moroz and the communist. In 1917, with the Bolshevik Revolution, Ded Moroz was banished to exile. He was considered a kind of kid's god, which was impermissible during the Soviet times when Russian leaders were flatly against any manifestations of religiousness. But only 20 years later, Ded Moroz returned to the country and New Year's celebration became public. Since then, Ded Moroz and Snegurочка appear on New Year's Eve, putting presents under the fir tree for the kids to find in the morning. Those wishing to make acquaintance with Ded Moroz in his domestic surroundings can board trains and travel to the picturesque town in Veliki Ustuyeg in the Volgodisky region. Again, I probably butchered that, I'm sure. If you want to see what his palace looks like, where did I have that? Here it is. So he has an ice. Ded Moroz, grandfather, is cool in both literal sense. His hands are ice cold. In the metaphorical sense, he's a tough guy. No red nose for Ded Moroz. Ded Moroz is a lot more sensible than Santa and chooses obedient horses instead of capricious flying reindeer to get around. Elves, who doesn't find them irritating? Ded Moroz has an infinitely sweeter Snegurочка, or Snow Maiden, as his sidekick instead. Chimneys. Ded Moroz does not go down chimneys. With almost all his believers living in flats with central heating, Ded Moroz does the logical thing and walks straight through the front door. What if someone sees him? That's no problem because he's a cool dude. The Grand Palace, unlike Mr. C, Ded Moroz isn't a dark horse when it comes to his domicile. Quite the opposite. He's a proud Russian patriot who keeps the doors of his wooden palace. And this is his palace right here. So you can go visit this place, actually, in Russia. This is fittingly for the Mother Russia nationalist attitude of today. Both Snegurочка and her granddad are great patriots, with both of them based in Russia. Indeed, unlike Santa, whose home is shrouded in secrecy, Ded Moroz's residence can be pinpointed on the map to a small village just a few hours north of Moscow. Hundreds of thousands of visitors come to see his grand, almost palatial wooden home each year. Those who never fell for the, quote, seeing is not believing adage can examine every little detail of their present-making process to their heart's content. Nothing is off bounds, from the magical kitchen where Ded's favorite pelimni are made to the bedroom where Ded Moroz snoozes all summer long. And so also, I thought, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. But when I look at in the Western world, I think Jack Frost is probably a little bit of a better, even though, again, we can see the gift-giving attributes of Ded Moroz. But Jack Frost is the personification of frost, ice, snow, sleet, winter, and freezing cold. He is a variant of Old Man Winter, who is held responsible for frosty weather, nipping the fingers and toes in such weather, coloring the foliage in autumn, and leaving fern-like patterns on cold windows in the winter. Starting in late 19th century literature, more developed characterizations of Jack Frost depict him as a sprite-like character, sometimes appearing as a sinister, mischief-making, or as a hero. And so we see this sort of trickster figure that's both good and bad in Jack Frost, that I think is very accurate and sympathetic to the Russian version of Ded Moroz. Now, in regards to, let's see... So in regards to, so here is the article. I'm not going to read the OCA article on St. Nicholas. If you would like to, you can do so. Here is the link for the St. Nicholas OCA article, the real Santa Claus. But here on OrthoWiki, if you just pull up St. Nicholas, which I will share with you guys right now in the live chat, this is why St. Nicholas, again, he's associated with a lot of different people in the tradition. But it's his gift giving, his most famous exploit. Here we go, right here. This is on OrthoWiki, by the way. In his most famous exploit, St. Nicholas aided a poor man who had 3 daughters, but could not afford a proper dowry for them. This meant that they would remain unmarried and probably, in absence of any possible employment, would eventually become prostitutes. Even if they did not, unmarried maidens in those days would have been assumed as being a prostitute. Hearing of the girl's plight, St. Nicholas decided to help them, but being too modest to help the family in public or to save them the humiliation of accepting charity, he went to the house under the cover of night and threw in 3 purses, each one for each daughter, filled with gold coins, through the window opening into the house. One version has him throwing 1 purse for 3 consecutive nights. Another has him throwing the purses over a period of 3 years, each time the night before of the daughters comes of age. Invariably, the 3rd time, the father lies in wait, trying to discover the identity of their benefactor. In one version, the father confronts the saint, only to have Nicholas say it is not him he should think, but God alone. In another version, Nicholas learns of the poor man's plan and drops the 3rd bag down the chimney instead. A variant holds that the daughter had washed her stockings that evening and had hung them over the embers to dry, and that the bag of gold fell into the stocking. The stories with the most likely historical basis are the stories of Nicholas helping 3 girls and stories of Nicholas coming to the aid of sailors. Others, especially that one of the 3 murdered children, are much later additions. And so what they're referring to as the 3 murdered children is that there's a legend that St. Nicholas, there was a butcher who murdered 3 children, and St. Nicholas aided in the resurrection of these children through his very righteous and pious prayers. So that's where the whole gift giving in association with St. Nicholas is. And so this Ded Moroz, he also gives gifts. This is one of the things that I would say Jack Frost, who I think is a sort of analogous figure to the Russian version, he doesn't really give gifts, but he's also a sort of trickster figure. He's both good and bad. He's sort of mischievous in different ways. And so we even see, I don't know if you guys know the movie Santa Claus. I'm sure most of you guys do, with Tim Allen. That Santa Claus 3 with Martin Short actually has Jack Frost trying to steal Christmas and all this stuff. But again, the figure of Santa Claus is an American amalgamation of a lot of these different figures. We can look over to the French and we see, again, Pierre Noël. Pierre Noël is a legendary gift bringer at Christmas in France and other French-speaking areas, identified with Father Christmas, or again the American Santa Claus of English-speaking territories. Though they were traditionally different, all of all of them are now the same character with different names and shared characteristics of a red outfit, workshop at the North Pole, Lapland, and teacher of reindeer. According to tradition, on Christmas Eve, children leave their shoes by the fireplace filled with carrots and treats for Pierre Noel's donkey. Before they go to bed, Pierre Noel takes the offerings and, if the child has been good, leaves presents in their place. Presents are traditionally small enough to fit in the shoes, candy, money, or small toys. Pierre Noel is sometimes confused with another character in Eastern France. In Belgium, in Switzerland, and in Northern Europe, there are parallel traditions that celebrate St. Nicholas, December 6th. He is followed by La Pierre Faltard, who exists also in different parts of Germany, Austria, Krampus, Netherlands, Nicholas of Myra. In Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil, due to the influence of French culture in the 19th century, many of Papa Noel or Pierre Noel, Papa Noel, was adopted, opposing, for example, the name Pai Natal in Portugal. In Turkey, were Noel Baba. In Louisiana, Cajun culture, a version of Papa Noel is modeled after Santa Claus, in which he arrives at homes towed by 8 alligators. That's hilarious. In some families, his visit is followed by the arrival of a figure called La Christine on New Year's Eve, bearing sweets and nuts. Okay, so that's the German version. Here is Santa Claus, as I told you, the Dutch version of Santa Claus. And this, is a much more close relationship to the actual historical St. Nicholas. So guys, make sure you smash that like. We're getting ready to now dive into all the psychedelic, and that I hope to make my case of the relationship of the semiotics related to a sort of psychedelic shamanism related to it. So please smash that like, guys, and also please support with the Streamlabs link if you can. Anybody who enjoys the streams here and you'd like to help out, please help out through a Streamlabs donation, or if you prefer YouTube, Super Chat with YouTube. Also, part 2 of this stream is going to be over on the website for members. So here's Santa Claus. He is a legendary figure based on St. Nicholas, patron saint of children. Other Dutch names for the figure include the saint, the good saint, the good holy man. Many descendants and cognates of Santa Claus are St. Nicholas, and other languages are also used in Low Countries, nearby regions of former Dutch colonies. The Feast of Santa Claus celebrates the name day of St. Nicholas. On the 6th of December, the feast is celebrated annually in giving the gifts of St. Nicholas. On the 5th of December, Santa Claus is one of the sources for the popular Christmas icon of Santa Claus. Okay, and so here is Krampus. So when we look at some of the older versions of St. Nicholas, he's actually associated with going around with this guy right here. Krampus is a horned anthropomorphic figure in Central and Eastern Alpine folklore who during the Christmas season scares children who have misbehaved, assisting St. Nicholas. The pair visit children on the night of the 5th of December, with St. Nicholas rewarding well-behaved children with modest gifts such as oranges, dried fruit, walnuts, and chocolate, while the badly behaved ones only receive punishment from Krampus with birch rods. Ooh. And so we can see Krampus is certainly a sort of satanic, demonic figure. Here's one image right here. What does it say? Greetings from Krampus. Yes, definitely the greetings I would love to have as a child. Greetings from Krampus. Now, okay, this was the region of Finland that I wanted to highlight. So look how north in Finland, this is supposed to be where, in Lapland, this is supposed to be where Santa is from. Santa Claus. This is the Santa Claus village. Now, I want to begin tying this to shamanism, okay? And so we're going to begin here with a little video back from my old YouTube channel of Terrence McKenna talking about his version. And now, of course, this is coming from very non-Christian, pagan, psychedelic people. But I think there's a bit of truth here in regards to some of the semiotics of Santa Claus and how this gets going. But I want to present my case for the shamanistic elements of Santa Claus before we dive into then Coca-Cola and how the contemporary Santa Claus really got going. So here's the first video that I want to show you guys. And so we're going to watch... Actually, crap, I got to get my speaker. 1 second, let me grab my speaker. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So now let me connect this speaker real quick, and then we're going to dive into this. Okay. So here is Terrence McKenna giving his little ditty. We're going to watch a portion of this video. This is basically 3 clips saying the exact same thing, but we're going to play the first 2 clips. It's all within one video that I made, let's see, a few years ago, 3 years ago now. So check this out, and then we're going to go dive into an article really analyzing some of the shamanic pagan elements of Santa Claus.
It's Christmas morning. You know, that amazing childlike approach to the tree lit with lights and this expectation of gifts and all that. In fact, it's interesting, if you want to look at a folkway that seems to have not been fully explicated, take a look for a minute at Santa Claus. Santa Claus is the master of the elves, and Santa Claus's elves make toys. And Santa Claus is associated with the colors red and white, the colors of Amanita muscaria. And Santa Claus is associated with reindeer. And reindeer are part of the Amanita muscaria cult because you can drink the urine of the reindeer, and it's better than the first get-go of the mushroom. And then, if all that weren't enough, Santa Claus lives at the center of the world. He lives at the North Pole, where Yggdrasil, the magic world tree, is growing. And then he is active at the winter solstice with his gift-giving elves. So this is clearly a very old folkway that has all the motifs of DMT embedded in it. And it's the major area where we give permission for the expression of these images in our own culture. I mean, this is where we get all of this stuff. And the magic toys of Santa's workshop are the demon artifacts of the elfin forges that are alchemical productions. Yeah.
It really is a Santa Claus.
Hey. There is a Santa Claus. My belief in elves is very puzzling to my children. An example of how a very ancient folkway can be incorporated into our culture without us even realizing it, and is provided by discussing Amanita muscaria. If you go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and you look up Santa Claus, they'll tell you that it has to do with St. Nicholas, and it got started in the 11th century. But when you look at the Santa Claus story, it's a perfect mythologium to analyze from this point of view, because look what's going on with Santa Claus. First of all, Santa Claus's colors are red and white, the colors of the Amanita muscaria, for sure. Santa Claus lives at the North Pole. What does this mean? It means that Santa Claus lives at the Axis Mundi, where Yggdrasil, the magic world ash of Welsh mythology, has taken root. Santa Claus flies. This is what shaman do. Santa Claus is the master of the reindeer, the animal most associated with the Amanita muscaria. Santa Claus is aided in his work by troops of elves. And what is the work of Santa Claus? To build toys for children. Remember the DMT things saying, look at this, look at this. Well, those were off-duty elves, clearly. And So here are all the motifs, and I believe that for children in our culture, that all the Christer stuff is not what Christmas is about. Christmas is about standing in front of the tree on Christmas morning with the gifts arrayed and the twinkling lights on. Well, that tree is the tree that the Amanita muscaria forms its symbiotic relationship to. It's always spruce or pine that it has a mycorrhizal relationship to. So the number of motifs relating Santa Claus to a cult of Amanita muscaria, there's almost nothing but relational motifs there. And yet if you suggest this to people, they just back away in horror, you know. Well,
Okay, so that was McKenna's take. Now let's look into some other articles regarding this topic, because this is he's not novel in this take, and actually it makes a lot more sense than any of the explanations regarding why does Santa Claus have flying reindeer? Why does Santa Claus have a bunch of elves making toys? Why is Santa Claus living on the North Pole? A lot of these different characteristics, again, especially the flying reindeer, they really don't make any sense outside the explanation that I want to share with you guys now. Have you ever wondered why in modern Christmas tradition we do all these things? Yada, yada, yada. There are answers to these questions, and the history is not so far-fetched or even that hidden. You just have to know where to look. The first place is the North Pole. Seriously, ancient Siberia, near the top of the world. The story of Santa has likely origins where he supposedly lives in the frigid north. Now, why Siberia? Because if you look into the Tunguski people, Siberian shamanism, you'll see that fly-agaric or Amanita muscaria is a common characteristic of Siberian shamanism. And so we're going to watch a quick video here actually talking about that. In this wintry wonderland, if you go searching for Santa, you may not find him or his elven factory, but what you will find is a group of indigenous natives that are known to Siberia. Among these cultures are the northern Tungusic people, known as the Evenki. The Evenki were predominantly hunter-gatherers. And in fact, let's see here. See, here is the Tungusics. And it was actually an Orthodox priest who was the first one to make contact with them. So the word shaman, because these were the first group within academic studies of shamanism, it was the Siberian cults of again, the North, were the first group to be studied. And that was really the first sort of psychedelic form of shamanism that was known to Western European scholarship. And that's why shaman, and why we call it shamanism, is actually comes from the Tungusic term for their sort of healer, their miracle worker, which was saman. So, and that's what this is talking, the word shaman comes from the Tungusic, and it was actually an Orthodox priest, Avakum. I'm not familiar who he was, but he was the first one to really make contact with them and study them. Among these cultures, the Evenki were predominantly hunter and gatherers and were, as well as reindeer herders. Their survival depended largely upon the health and vitality of their domesticated reindeer. The reindeer provided the Evenki and other northern tribes with everything from clothing, housing material, wares, and tools, from the bones and antlers, transportation. Yes, they ride reindeer. The Evenki were also a shamanic culture. The word shaman, as I said, has its roots in the Tungus word saman, means one who knows or knows the spirits. Many of the classic shamanic characteristics that are later will be reflected in cultures all over the world were originally documented by Russian European explorers while observing the Tungus and related in people's religious lives. This includes the three-world system, the shamanic journey, or the soul flight, and these altered states of consciousness, animistic belief in spirit, and so forth. A significant aspect of shamanism practiced in this part of the world during this time was linked to Amanita muscaria, also known as fly-agaric mushroom. The mushroom is more widely accepted in the modern world as the Alice in Wonderland mushroom. It was held very sacred by these ancient people and was used by the shaman for others for ceremonial and spiritual purposes. Amanitas, as you can tell by the pictures, range from brightly red and white to golden, orange, and yellow. They only grow under certain types of evergreen trees, spruce and pines particularly. They form a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the tree, with the exchange of which allows them to grow. One of the reported ancient beliefs was that the mushroom was actually the fruit of the tree. Due to the lack of seed, it was commonly held that the fly agaric was divine, a kind of virginally birthed sacred plant. Although intensely psychoactive, and that one, again, so the Amanita is not intensely psychoactive. This is one of the, this is actually a misnomer. That the Amanita muscaria mushroom, it's actually difficult for people to reach these deep, and this is where maybe the elves, it's a difficult point, because as you've heard Terrence McKenna, and this is to bring a little bit more objective criticism to it, the machine elves, the gnomes, the leprechauns, the small people that people claim that they encounter when they get on DMT, dimethyltryptamine, what's considered the most potent and psychedelic of all psychedelic substances, they say that they interact with these small people. Now, he was famous for calling them transforming machine elves. People don't really get there with the Amanita muscaria. They really have to take a lot. Often people, when they describe their phenomenological experience with the Amanita muscaria mushroom, is it makes them very tired. They enter in what's considered more of like a dream world. Often people will you have to dry out the mushroom because it has muscimol, which is a toxin. So if you just eat this mushroom wet, if you find it out in nature and it's growing under one of these spruce or pine trees and you just grab it and eat it, it'll actually kill you. You have to let it dry so the muscimol isn't so active. And people who take it, I never took Amanita muscaria back in those days because it didn't give you the intense visions that were often described. Instead, it would make you very sleepy and people would have very strange dreams. Very strange dreams. So to say that it's intensely psychoactive isn't totally accurate. It definitely has a history of being psychoactive and has a history related to Siberian and even so what we would consider Nordic forms of shamanism. And that's where, again, we're going to connect this back with the American Santa Claus and how Santa Claus, again, when we looked at a lot of these figures like Ded Moroz, when we looked at Pierre Noel, none of them were riding reindeer per se. None of them had elves. Where does this stuff get going? And we're going to see that the Santa Claus, the American Santa Claus, really gets fused. Now, did they know about some of this stuff? I don't know, but it's very interesting. Amanitas are also toxic. One way to reduce the toxicity and increase the psychoactive potency was to simply dry them. When out collecting the mushrooms, people would pick a bunch of them under the evergreen trees and lay them out along the branches while continuing to pick the mushrooms beneath the tree. So this is the idea of decorating the tree, right? So you would come across this tree in the wild. You would pick these mushrooms. The shaman would put this on the tree, and obviously if you were to see a tree with these red and white mushrooms scattered all over it, it'd look very decorated. It would look, very interesting, unnatural. And then the shaman would come later in the day once they dried out and put them in a bag, as they're going to tell you. The evergreen trees and lay them out along the branches while continuing to pick the mushrooms beneath other trees. The result was something that looked very reminiscent of a modern Christmas tree. Evergreen trees with branches all dotted with bright red, roundish decorations in the case of the sacred mushrooms. At the end of the season, the shaman and harvester would go around to each of the mushroom stashes and put them all in a large sack. A large sack? Remind you of anything? Not only this, as the story and tradition goes, the shaman would then, carrying this large sack, visit the homes of his or her people and deliver the mushrooms to them. They would then continue the drying process by hanging them in a sock near the fire. And so here's just a few artistic depictions. Yada, yada, yada. These are Siberian shamans. Again, highly, highly tight relational to reindeer. Another way to reduce the toxicity of the sacred mushrooms is through human filtration. Once passed through the body, the toxic elements are apparently filtered by the liver, and the resultant urine that comes out contains the still intact psychoactive elements. so they drank the filtered urine. But that's only half the story. Somewhere in the mythic origins of this practice is the reindeer, because the reindeer also love these mushrooms. They dig through the snow to eat them, and they also drink their own urine afterwards. And this is, people talk about this often, that the reindeer, if you get out of your yurt, if you visit some of these very northern Arctic places, these Arctic forms of shamanism, that engage in these Amanita muscaria rituals, that the reindeer would literally try to knock you over to eat your urinated snow because of the likelihood that it may have Amanita muscaria in it. And the same thing is true for the shamans. And this connects back then to my discussion on these frescoes. Remember the Christian video I talked about, these Christian, what appears to be symbolic depictions of the Amanita muscaria mushroom, is that when you look at people like the Manichaeans, or the Borborites, they have relationships to drinking urine and stuff like that. So this is where speculation abounds then, that were they part of these Amanita muscaria cults that potentially were part of the mysteries of the ancient world. Because reindeers also love mushrooms, they dig through the snow to eat them, and they also drink the urine afterwards. So perhaps long ago, one of the first shamans witnessed the reindeer's love affair with this particular mushroom, as well as its propensity for eating its own fleshly yellowed snow, and saw how peculiarly it behaved as the romance heated up. The curiosity, indeed a hallmark of the characteristic of a shaman, couldn't be contained, and the shaman did what he had to do. He first ate some of the yellow snow himself, and without a doubt realized the profound wisdom and magic not only in the mushroom but the reindeer. And so the romance began. However, it may have happened in antiquity, and the connection between reindeer, the mushroom, and shamanism is apparent. A very common vision is one of while under the influence of fly agaric is precisely that of flying. And that is true. A lot of people who go into these dream states after eating these red and white mushrooms claim that they experience what feels like in their dream that they're flying. And so, again, when we have this idea that Santa Claus is flying on reindeer, one can't help but notice that that is potentially a direct correlation back to these ancient forms of shamanism. Not only do they observe themselves flying, but also other things like reindeer. It is not difficult to connect the dots here. Shamanic people are deeply interested in their environment. They learn the magical and mystical properties of the natural world and often assign a great deal of importance and sacredness to the bearers of that magic. For some of these ancient Siberian people, the power was charioted by the reindeer and the sacred mushroom. That the reindeer should have the ability to fly is evident not only in the vision or their clearly altered state once intoxicated, but also in the wisdom they offer to the shamans by eating the mushroom in the first place and for guiding them there to do so. It wasn't only the reindeer who could fly, but the shamans took flight. And so if you get, again, most books on shamanism will talk about the archaic techniques of ecstasy, that shamanism and getting in these ecstatic states, whether it be the Amazonian use of ayahuasca, the peyote use in Southwest America, all types of inebriating substances, and even for shamans who don't have access to mind-altering psychoactive substances, they'll do what's called ordeal traumas. So that's what the sun dance is back in some of those Western forms, these Native American tribes, is that they would literally dance in the sun until they became a form of intoxicated. So, as mentioned, the shamanic journey or soul flight is the keystone to the shamanic practice, the shamanic flight, the flight of ecstasy. And especially so in ancient Siberian culture, in order to interact with the spirits, the shaman had to be able to leave this world and enter theirs. This was accomplished by projecting his or her spirit from the physical into the immaterial. They either needed the power to do this or their own to use a spirit helper to make them. It's very common for shamans to develop relationships with birds naturally as they have a power to fly, but here in the North Pole, what better animal to use than the magical flying reindeer? And so check this out right here. This will probably blow your... So this is exactly what we're talking about, but this is a reference from a BBC documentary.
In the Arctic Circle, this fungus also has magical associations with animals. Fly agaric contains hallucinogenic chemicals and is a favorite food of reindeer. For thousands of years, the lives of reindeer and Sami people have been entwined. Fly agaric was important to both of them. In autumn, reindeer seek out the mushrooms, even under an early fall of snow. No one knows whether the reindeer are affected, but in the past, Sami shamans took fly agaric in their visionary rituals. They even drank urine from reindeer, believed to be under the influence. In trance, they contacted the great reindeer spirit. On humans, the drug heightens senses and creates visions of flying. Some believe the greatest of all modern myths arose in the Sami's visionary flights of fancy. Perhaps early 19th century ideas drew on these stories to create a Christmas legend.
So that is a known zoological fact that that reindeer engage in the eating of Amanita muscaria mushrooms, as this BBC documentary shows, and that is a historical practice. So John World said, "Didn't Dyers say this was all BS?" I don't know how he could. This is a fact. Whether how much you want to associate it with Santa Claus, that's the debated. But whether reindeers eat Amanita muscaria mushroom, that's a fact. That's a zoological fact. I don't know how that is up for controversy. There is one other component to the shaman's flight that corresponds to the Christmas exploration, and that has to do with how they got to the other worlds. The shamanic cosmology often consists of three worlds: the lower, the middle, and the upper worlds. Connecting the three worlds is the cosmic axis, known as the world tree. The world tree served as a bridge or a portal that allowed the shaman and spirits to move between the three worlds. It is a gateway as well as the highway. In ancient Siberia, the same tree that also bore fruit of the Amanitas, meaning a spruce or a pine, was also the symbol for the world tree. The Mckenna, again, the Tunguskic Siberian Shamanic tribe. This is in Russia. This is, again, the tribe that was first contacted by the Orthodox priests that I mentioned. And other indigenous groups lived in roundish teepee-like structures called yurts. Sometimes they would place a pine tree in their yurts for ceremonial purposes. This symbolized the world tree, and they would harness its symbolic power to propel the spirit up and out of the yurt through the smoke hole, i.e. the chimney. Once the journey was complete, they would return through the smoke hole chimney with the gifts of the spirit world. They also believed that the North Star was at the very top of the upper world. Because of the world tree was its axis, they connected it to their entire cosmology. The North Star set upon the very top of the world tree, meaning the sort of some of the ways that they would decorate their trees, their Yggdrasils, if you will. And so, moving on, one of the final elements of the Christmas tradition that we know today is the whole concept of gifting. Now, this is where, again, I would take contention with some of this stuff, where, again, that's why I'm interested in getting into the nitty gritty. That's why I started this stream by going into Ded Moroz, getting into St. Nicholas and the 4th century understanding of him helping out the poor man with the dowry of the 3 women. That is clearly the origin of the gift-giving celebration within Christianity. That this clearly is related back to St. Nicholas. Now, they make no mention of some of this stuff, which I think it's not totally serious scholarship. Again, not that this person is considered to be a scholar, but the point being that when It's all these different things. That's what I hate. I hate when people are just so simplistic, right? Oh, well, Santa Claus is St. Nicholas. Well, okay, yeah, that's true, but also it's more complex than that. Everything is more complex. I hate when people do not want to appreciate nuance. So everything is about nuance. Nuance. When you see people not being nuanced, particular, specific, you can see that they're not a serious mind, really. And so that's how I felt about the end of this article when they start talking about, oh, well, then the whole celebration of gift giving is tied to shamanism, and because the shaman gives the mushrooms to the people. Well, that may be true, but I've talked about before in regards to our theology of logos spermaticos, we can also appreciate that the shaman is a sort of tribal healer, and as a tribal healer is a sort of prefiguring of Christ before there's Christ. When you're in a tribal setting, when we're between, post Adam and Eve, when we're back, after the Tower of Babel, and now we're in all these different groups with all these different languages, and we can't understand each other. No wonder, of course, some of these groups, logos spermaticos, there's seeds of truth in all of it. So yeah, the person who heals is also the master of spirits. That's exactly what Christ does with Legion. That's exactly what he does with Beelzebub. That's exactly what he does with the demons when he expels, when he heals, when he performs miracles. And so shamanism as a historical phenomenon to me is a precursor to what Christ is. The incarnation of the logos as Jesus Christ fulfills all this stuff. All of it. And so even the idea, again, as I'll talk about in part 2 of this for members, is Christmas pagan or Christian? And I'm going to argue that Christmas is Christian, and that the whole paganization of Christmas is really overblown. And again, it's a lack of nuance, specificity. That's where you want to get into the details of everything. And so looking at the elves, I was trying to find, well, where the elves come from? So I think that the most logical explanation for the reindeer and the American Santa Claus is related to the Amanita Muscaria cults of Arctic forms of shamanism, which include Finland. And that's where our big connector is going to be. Because when we look at the elves, where's the elf narrative get going in regards to Santa Claus? Well, it goes back to Scandinavia. Well, Scandinavian cultures had access to these Arctic forms of shamanism that I'm already showing you. And this is just one sliver of who Santa Claus is. That's my point. Because Santa Claus is St. Nicholas. That's the historical root. But there's also this sort of semiotic stuff with all the reindeers, with all the elves, with the colors, with the flying, with the North Pole. I think there's also something else to that there's sort of a symbiotic truth behind it. And so this talks about how the elves really weren't a part of the sort of celebrative, Father Christmas doesn't have elves. Ded Moroz doesn't have elves. Okay, Pierre Noel doesn't have elves. Where do the elves come from? And so one likelihood is that Scandinavian people believe that elves are house gnomes who guarded their homes against evil. They were good. These elves were good to you, but if you were bad, the mischievous elves would play tricks on you. Although these gnomes mostly were benevolent, you can find gnomes then in a bunch of different elves, leprechauns, these small trickster figures that can do good things or bad things. Right? You can find it they're replete in a lot of different mythologies. Whether you want to look at the Druids, look at ancient Celtic, look at Celtic mythology with the leprechauns. There's a lot going on here. And so although these gnomes were mostly benevolent, they quickly turn nasty when not properly treated. Some of the tricks they enjoyed playing were giving you nightmares by sitting on your head while you were dreaming, tangling your hair. And this is where it's very interesting then, where the psychedelic, I never personally experienced the self-transforming machine elves. I tried to over and over and over get into those deep psychedelic places. I never got it. But it is interesting that they're encountering these sort of demiurgic miniature trickster figures. And so stealing your sausages, folks believe that if they left a bowl of porridge on the doorstep at night, the elves would be happy and not subject them to their ornery antics. Throughout the centuries, they were, either loved or loathed. Some people then believed them to be trolls and cannibals. The perception of gnomes largely depend on whether a person was naughty or nice. By the mid-1800s, again, this is when Santa Claus gets developed. Santa Claus is a uniquely American invention. The true purpose of the elves was revealed by the Scandinavians. Elves, already a tradition associated with storytelling and magic, assumed a new significance in the mid-1800s, and their true intention began to be held by nothing else than the Father Christmas, Santa Claus. But Santa Claus, again, remember, is the Anglo term. So Father Christmas is the English. When the Puritans banned the celebration of St. Nicholas, that's when they came up with Father Christmas. And so you have, again, all these different figures from all these different cultures are amalgamated together to form the American conception of who Santa Claus is. The fairies that are somewhat mischievous, but the true friend helpers of Father Christmas is during this period when the elves began to be referred to as Christmas elves or simply elves and not just house gnomes anymore. Artists such as Henson and Nystrom completed the picture of elves for us. It has now been held that the elves help Santa design and make the wonderful toys and gifts he brings to children. They were said to have other duties as well. Some elves take care of Santa's reindeer and keep his sleigh in good condition, ready to fly through the skies on Christmas. Others help Santa keep his naughty or nice list in order, and some elves guard the secret location of Santa's village. Elves make sudden appearances in the days before Christmas to keep an eye on each child and see which of them are behaving well and obeying their parents. They are believed to be Santa's secret agents and report their findings back to him. Yada yada yada. So this goes on and on and on, but. Oh, here's some of the Tungusic. So here's Finnish shamanism. Okay, so I showed you the whole thing on the fly agaric and amina muscaria. Well, these practices were already they are part of the history of Finland. Well, why is that important? Why is that important? Because here we go. The story of Santa Claus, Coca-Cola, and Haddon Sunbloom. Sunbloom. Have you guys heard of him? So this is an important part of the American conception of Santa Claus. And turns out he is from Finland. And he creates Santa Claus in the Coca-Cola version is a Finnish depiction of their ancestral traditions, which they had access to these Arctic forms of shamanism. That's what's really interesting. It's a nice dinner party line, especially if the dinner takes place during the festive season. Of course, Santa never dressed in red until the Coca-Cola ad changed the color of his suit. The statement is surprising and somewhat shocking. Don't tell your kids just yet. But because it sounds as if the beloved figure of Father Christmas was hijacked by a giant fizzy drink brand, the truth is a little bit more subtle. Let's get to our time-traveling sleigh and head to America in the midst of the Depression. In 1931... and unemployment has hit 8 million, having doubled in a year. Cheeriness is a rare commodity. Enter Coca-Cola, which has been running Christmas ads since the 1920s. Santa came in many guises back then, with some images depicting him as a skinny figure, swathed in a green cloak, although his white beard was frequently knee-length. Coke's ad agency was Darcy, founded by Bill Darcy, and its Don Draper figure was a guy named Archie Lee. Lee was a creative genius who'd first managed the position of Coke as a wintertime drink back in 1922 with the slogan, "Thirst knows no season." He believed in Coke so hard that he even invested in the company. He was a visionary, but he's not the hero of this story. That would be Haddon Sonny Sunbloom. A Michigan-born illustrator of Scandinavian descent, Archie commissioned Sunbloom to depict a Santa who would be iconic and yet a real person. The artist took his cue from Clement Clark Moore's poem, A Visit from St. Nick. Again, reach back to the real historical figure of St. Nicholas of Myra, which of course begins, "'Twas the night before Christmas." The Santa of the poem is a cuddly, jolly fellow. Haddon Sunbloom gave his Santa a similarly plump and twinkly-eyed demeanor. He's clad in a bright red suit, but it wasn't the first time the character had been depicted in that garb. Interestingly, in the Christmas card Sunbloom's family might have received from their relatives in Sweden and Finland, the equivalent of Santa Claus would have traditionally worn red and white ensembles. The Santa of the poem is a cuddly, joyful... According to Coca-Cola, in the beginning, Sunbloom painted the image of Santa using a live model, a friend, Lou Prentice, a retired salesman. When Prentice passed away, Sunbloom used himself as a model, painting while looking into a mirror. Finally, he began relying on photographs to create the image of Saint Nick. So again, yes, it's true that Coca-Cola totally re-envisioned the American understanding of who Santa Claus is. That is true. But it got its archetype through Hutton from Scandinavia, Finland, which, as I was trying to show you, already had a... where is that article? Already had a history of shamanic practice, right? You guys can look this up. Finnish shamanism. Go look up the ancient religions of Finland. Sunbloom Santa was a hit the first year, and the artist continued painting him until 1964, when other artists took over but kept the same template. In 1931, vision of the character, a symbol of joy born into the Depression, embedded itself in popular culture and became the Santa Claus children imagine when they find it hard to sleep on Christmas Eve. As for Hayden Sunbloom, his last illustration was a Christmas cover for Playboy, go figure, of course, in 1972. Degeneracy rises its head again. It seems he was destined to be forever linked to this time of year and certainly gave a season for the greatest gift. So now let's watch this Coca-Cola video real quick.
What many don't realize is
Here we go. Hopefully, YouTube doesn't take me down for this, but this is an interesting video to show you, again, the legend of Coca-Cola and Santa Claus.
a world without Santa Claus. It's hard to imagine. No boots, red suit, and white beard. But what many don't realize is what we're talking about is a world without artist Haddon Sunbloom.
I think now when people envision Santa Claus, they envision the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. Many of them don't even know the origin. The fact that Haddon Sunbloom painted this perfect vision of Santa Claus and kept his vision of Santa Claus consistent for over 30 years.
It all began with this 1931 painting. It's Sunbloom's first Santa, the one he created for Coca-Cola's Thirst Knows No Season campaign.
It was really Santa. He's big, he's jolly, he's wearing red and white, and he looked like Santa.
A visible departure from the first Santa Coke experimented with in 1923.
That Santa was a mean-looking Santa.
And then again with artist Fred Misen in 1930.
The ad was so popular that we used Haddon Sunbloom to paint his vision of Santa Claus every year from 1931 until 1964.
It was Sunbloom Santa that was a hit, and yet the original he painted over.
Take yourself back to the 30s and you're in the middle of the Depression. And if you're an artist, the most expensive thing that you have is canvas and paint. So Sunbloom took that same 31 Santa and he just modified it a little bit. He put a hat on him, he changed the arm angle slightly and put a whip in his hand for the reindeer. So you can see the first and the third Santa Claus painting all in the same painting.
Throughout the years, Sunbloom's neighbor served as his model Santa, but when he passed away, the painter became the model.
It backfired on him one year when he was looking in the mirror and he painted his belt buckle in mirror image. So in the painting, the belt is actually drawn backwards.
Then there is the issue of Mrs. Claus.
Another year, very observant.
Again, remember, Ded Moroz does not have a Mrs. Claus. The Russian version that we talked about only has his granddaughter. Remember. And so that is Snegorochka.
Observant fan wrote in to ask what had happened to Mrs. Claus because Santa wasn't wearing his ring that year.
A lesser-known Sunbloom is included in the temporary display at the Oglethorpe University Museum of Art.
You have the famous Yes Girl, you have the Why Grow Thirsty Girl, you have the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. You have these really light, airy paintings. But this other piece of art, the Huskies, it's a little darker, but it tells a beautiful story and it's beautifully painted.
Sunbloom's stories, in wartime and in peace, not only made Santa relevant year after year, but are a testament to the changing times.
And in that 1964 one, he has a brand new technology, and he's showing the kids how to use a helicopter that he's brought for them. So times had moved.
As a tribute to the man who brought his image of Santa to the masses, his art lives on in a permanent exhibit at the World of Coke, so that we don't have to imagine a world without Sunbloom Santa Claus.
It just happened, but when it happened, it was a beautiful accident, and it created this wonderful Santa Claus for the rest of the world to enjoy.
All right, so how many of you guys knew about Coca-Cola's relationship to actually creating Santa Claus? And so that's where then I'm going to conclude this stream, is that I believe that Santa is a mixture of different things. That Santa Claus, the American version of Santa Claus, is a mixture of the historical saint of the Orthodox Church known as Saint Nicholas, and this is due to his understanding of gift giving and his care for the poor and the least among us, and how he is associated with a story of giving dowries to a poor man for his 3 daughters, and he did so by sneaking them into his house, whether that was for 3 nights in a row or for 3 years in a row. Nobody knows for certain, but that is the tradition of the church. Then you also have these other figures, the Russian Ded Moroz, the sort of winter wizard. You have Pierre Noël of France. You have Santa Claus of the Dutch. Again, all direct references back to St. Nicholas. You have Krampus, the sort of demonic figure that was associated with accompanying St. Nicholas on these evenings of giving toys and giving things to children. And then, of course, so you have all these different figures wrapped up together, whether it be Father Christmas, the English version. But Santa Claus, the term Santa Claus, doesn't get going until the early 1800s in America, because Americans were looking to create their own sort of tradition related to all these other traditions, related to the English variation, related to the Scandinavian, related to the Germanic, related to the French. And then we even have, as we showed here, the Greek version, Agios Vasilis. That is the Greek form of Santa Claus. So Europe had all these different variations of this ancient winter figure who sort of anthropomorphized and then mythologized a historical figure in St. Nicholas. But the American version is wrapped up with a lot of other things. The American version is where you get the flying reindeer. None of these other people have the flying reindeer. None of these other people have the toy elves. None of these other people have some of these stereotypes. Now, you might have the North Pole. You may have an association with sleighs being pulled by whether it be 3 horses or a donkey or something like that. But you don't have all this stuff together like you have in the American context. Once you begin to explore then the relationship of Amanita muscaria mushrooms, Siberian shamanism, Arctic shamanism, of which Finland had access to. And so if you actually go back and do research on ancient Finnish practices, Finnish shamanism, you're going to see that it's very likely, especially the way that reindeer were used, that they were knowledgeable of these ancient shamanistic Amanita muscaria practices, and that all these things coalesce together and the figure that we call Santa Claus. So that is my thesis, and I'm going to stick with it. I think it is way more encapsulating and way more embodying of all these different variations and how they come about. So Santa Claus is perfectly American because Coca-Cola then re-envisions it with a Finnish gentleman who then paints all these pictures, and that's how we get the Santa Claus we know today. And that's a form of commodification. It symbolizes consumerism, of which are, again, very American practices. So our Santa Claus is an amalgamation of all these different European variations, all pointing back to who St. Nicholas was. And then he has, again, what I believe these pagan shamanic roots. All right, so with that being said, guys, I'm going to now check out the Super Chats. And, all right, so it looks like we only have one Super Chat. One Super Chat. Shout out to the Green Feathers. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you very, very much for the $5 super chat. He has no comment, so thank you very much, brother. I hope you enjoyed the stream. It is very time-consuming to prepare for these streams and do all the research, so I appreciate any little bit. Thank you very much, the Green Feathers. Again, make sure you go and subscribe to our brother, the Green Feathers. He has a nice Orthodox YouTube channel, of which he just had our great friend Jay Dyer on over there. And so then I've also done a stream with the Green Feathers, so shout out to the Green Feathers. God bless you, brother. Hope everybody's doing well on your side of things. So yeah, he just throws in a comment of a snowflake. So thank you very much, brother. I appreciate your support for all the research and work that I put into these streams. You know, it takes a while to prepare before I go live. I try to always have dense quality content that you can't get anywhere else. So thank you very much, the Green Feathers. Looks like that is the only super chat tonight. So guys, if you appreciate what we're doing here, could you please become a website member? I would greatly appreciate that. You can do so with the following link. Please smash that like, guys, if you have not. You can become a website member with the following link. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And if you want to, I'm trying to get the annual. If you guys just want to pay $60, all you have to do is just donate $60. I will create your account for you. But if, again, until my website guy can get it worked out on the back end where that's a legitimate option, you can always just send me $60 and I can create your account. So that's definitely one way to do it. If you guys would be interested in setting up a one-on-one session, you can do so with the following link here. I'd greatly appreciate it. Remember that the second part of this stream is going to be talking about is Christmas a pagan or Christian holiday, of which I'm going to be making the argument that it is a Christian holiday. And we'll be looking at the winter solstice celebrations of various pagan traditions and comparing that with Christianity and whether Christians Christianized a pagan celebration. Did pagans paganize a Christian celebration, or is it a little bit of both? So we're going to be diving into that as well. All right, looks like I got 2 more super chats. Thank you guys very much. Brandon throws in $5. Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it. No comments. So thank you very much, brother, for the support. I really appreciate it. Jared Fetzer throws in $3 and says, what about the Satan Claus controversy? Satan Claus controversy. I'm not too sure about the Satan Claus controversy. Now, if you want to talk about Satan Claus, you can definitely point back to Krampus. Krampus is no doubt he is a sort of demonic figure for sure. So Krampus definitely is a sort of demonic figure. I've never, again, I'd have to maybe do a little bit more research. I'm not familiar on Satan Claus per se. Jared, again, shout out to you. Had a good one-on-one session. I hope you're doing well. So I think what's more plausible is Santa Claus as an amalgamation of a variety of different European figures, and then he also is a shamanic figure as well. So thank you very much, Jared Fetzer, for the support. Is Human Milk Vegan throws in $15. Thank you very much, Is Human Milk Vegan, for the super chat. I really appreciate your support, brother. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it. And Thomas Henderson throws in $10 as well. Thank you very, very much, Thomas Henderson. God bless you, brother. He says, have a merry and blessed Christmas, my friend. Well, thank you so much, Thomas Henderson. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. So that looks like that is all the super chats, guys. Thank you, everybody, for supporting. Again, it takes a while to do all the research when I do these streams, so I appreciate any and all support. Shout out to the Green Feathers. Go subscribe to him. Shout out to Brandon. Shout out to Jared Fetzer. Shout out to Is Human Milk Vegan. And shout out to Thomas Henderson. I greatly appreciate your guys' support and your contributions to Church of the Eternal Logos. Again, everybody, remember that the second part of today's stream is going to be over on the website for website members. So please grab yourself a website membership, and you'll have access to the second half of this stream. So with that being said, oh, thank you very much. Shout out to Jerry. Shout out to Jerry and Exposing Powerful Lies. Thank you so much, brother. He throws in $5 and says, God bless, brother. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you for everything you do and your contributions to the community, man. I really appreciate it. Laugh My Butt Off says, great stream. Thanks. Well, thank you, brother. I really appreciate everybody being here and supporting. Thank you very much, Exposing Powerful Lies. Thank you, Jerry. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Thomas Henderson, for all your support. You've been very supportive for a while now. So thank you very much, Thomas Henderson. And so is Human Milk Vegan. Thank you very, very much, is Human Milk Vegan. I really appreciate all your support. Shout out to Brandon, and shout out to the Green Feathers again. Shout out to Jared Fetzer. So, guys, I really appreciate all the support. Thank you very, very much. Again, I have more streams that I want to do in the near future. So tomorrow I'll probably be back Tuesday with another stream. Let me know, guys, in the comment section what your favorite topic to stream on is. I really have some good academic stuff to do on Gnosticism, but I don't know how interesting Gnosticism is. It's very interesting to me. I don't know how interesting it is to you other guys, but trying to figure out some popular topics to dive into. So if you got ideas for very popular topics people would be interested in, please let me know. I'd greatly appreciate it. And again, thank you all for your support. Thank you, Exposing Powerful Lies. Shout out to Jerry. Thank you, Thomas Henderson. Thank you, Is Human Milk Vegan. Thank you, Jared Fetzer. Thank you, Brandon. And thank you, the Green Feathers. I really appreciate your guys' support. Again, Jared Fetzer says, what about Satan Claus? I'm not too sure. Thomas Henderson says, have a merry and blessed Christmas, my friend. Thank you very much, Thomas Henderson. And Jerry throws in a super chat and says, God bless, brother. Well, God bless you, Jerry, and young Babushka. I hope you guys are doing well. And God bless your family. So with that being said, guys, I think I'm going to hop off here. Again, I greatly appreciate everybody's support. Please get that website membership for the second half of this stream. I'll have that up over on the website tomorrow. So with that being said, as always, until Tuesday,